On the set of 1984's Conan the Destroyer, an interview with Arnold Schwarzenegger and bodybuilder turned journalist Rick Wayne proved prophetically ironic. Wayne watched as Arnold hefted the Conan sword, which in Wayne's words weighed a ton, and stood as a potent symbol of the limited roles and stifling typecasting that had confined many toga-wearing bodybuilders from previous eras to dead-end careers. Arnold was already chafing under the now-regretted bondage of a multi-picture Conan contract with producer Dino De Laurentiis. Noticing a pair of nondescript shoes, Wayne asked, "What are those for?" Schwarzenegger dismissively waved them off. "Oh, some shit movie I'm doing. Take a couple of weeks." 2 years prior, Conan the Barbarian had served as Arnold's battering ram into Hollywood, showcasing his muscular frame and working within his limited acting range. Conan broke down the barriers to the starring roles this former Mr. Olympia had long coveted. But this newfound success did little to prepare Arnold for the seismic shift his career was about to undertake. While playing the part of Conan had answered the riddle of steel, that shit movie, as Arnold had referred to it, became the Terminator, solving for Arnold the long sought-after riddle of stardom. For the now 36-year-old Schwarzenegger, the Terminator represented a pivotal crossroads. Poised for a career either in the straight-to-video market or suffering the purgatory of the risible European peplum epics that had constrained muscle men like Steve Reeves and Reg Park to their prison of limited cult appeal. The Terminator instead catapulted Schwarzenegger from novelty act to bona fide box office star. It redefined not only his acting career, but launched him into the stratosphere of Hollywood legend. Now, 40 years later, the Terminator remains a masterpiece of minimalist high-attention filmmaking, embedding Schwarzenegger's iconic character into the cultural fabric. The film's genesis is a study in serendipity and vision. On another timeline, Schwarzenegger may never have become a superstar, and casting Schwarzenegger as the Terminator shouldn't have worked. James Cameron, fresh from the B-movie trenches, had originally envisioned the Terminator as part of an infiltration unit, a super soldier insinuating himself into the human resistance, fighting the machines in a post-apocalyptic dystopia. Actors like Lance Henriksen and Das Boot's German lead Jürgen Prochnow were Cameron's prime candidates for their nondescript yet intense presence. With his Terminator firmly in mind, Cameron now needed a hero. Thanks to Conan, the studios considered Arnold a bankable star. But Cameron didn't want Arnold. Arnold was so far down the list of potentials that he wasn't even on Cameron's radar. Cameron reluctantly agreed to a lunch meeting with this overstuffed Mr. Universe, but he planned to scuttle Schwarzenegger's chances, picking a fight and reporting back to the studio that Conan was an asshole. But while lobbying for the role of Reese, Arnold had enthusiastically weighed in with his thoughts and insights on how the villain, this Terminator, should be played, triggering a light bulb moment for Cameron. When selecting a block of marble from the many, the artist Michelangelo had seen the Moses within. And when famed Western director Sergio Leone was asked what he saw in actor Clint Eastwood, Leone had replied that he had seen a block of marble. And during this lunch meeting, James Cameron began to feel the same way about Arnold, envisioning his untapped potential. Cameron's genius lay in transmuting Schwarzenegger's perceived liabilities, his robotic delivery, his imposing physicality, and his otherness into strengths. As the Terminator, Cameron crafted a role that liberated Arnold from not only the tyranny of his muscular body, but also the one-dimensional on-screen characters that threatened to confine him. But just as Arnold had ridden the crest of bodybuilding's golden era, his movie career fortuitously collided with the golden days of 80s action cinema. The zeitgeist was shifting from the self-doubting, introspective movie protagonists towards an epoch of savage heroes, operating outside the confines of the law and civilization. The Reagan years were also receptive and conducive to this emerging breed of hyper-masculine and overly muscular action hardbodies. Now, as Arnold spoke, Cameron was drawn in by his magnetic charisma, resolute that he had found his block of marble. Cameron sketched the sharp symmetrical angles of his cheekbones and jawline in the notepad, thinking to himself that this guy would make one hell of a Terminator. Cameron's initial plan of sabotaging the meeting had backfired spectacularly. Instead of clashing, the two bonded over bikes, guns, and the rare but shared qualities of stubborn self-reliance, insane confidence, and an insatiable hunger for success. Arnold, at first reluctant, now viewed the Terminator role as the ultimate lateral career move, enabling him a level of reinvention, extending his limited range, and his chance to jettison the straitjacket of Conan typecasting. In Arnold's words, "It sent a whole new signal to the community. It was understood that although I had the body, I no longer had to show it to make a point." Yet the irony of Schwarzenegger's portrayal lay in its duality. While he aimed at downplaying his physicality, his imposing presence remains an undeniable force on screen. Years of bodybuilding had honed not just his muscles, but his ability to communicate via his mastery of the wordless image. The film's marketing reflects the physically imposing yet nuanced dichotomy of Schwarzenegger's performance. The American poster emphasizes the physical, showcasing the Terminator's muscular form bearing both chest and guns. By contrast, the British poster downplays the character's physicality, rendering emphasis on its cybernetic nature with the half-human, half-machine visage, thereby presenting an image more congruent with the horror genre that the film more aptly represents. The movie's opening shot speaks to this dichotomy. Schwarzenegger's Terminator kneels naked in a pose reminiscent of Rodin's Thinker, resplendent of Sandow. Here was a being of manufactured perfection, a living metaphor for the merging of man and machine. Schwarzenegger's approach to the role was a masterclass in minimalism, yet memorable in its simplicity. Like the Conan film, Arnold meticulously planned and practiced the rendering of his actions and body semiotics until he had achieved a level of unconscious and effortless automaticity. Eschewing the overt display and signaling of his obvious muscularity, he focused more on perfecting the Terminator's movement, gesture, and gaze. Instead of the abrupt and stilted movements of a conventional movie android, Schwarzenegger's cyborg assassin glides with smooth, inhuman efficiency that belies his bulk. This attention to detail extended to his weapons training. Schwarzenegger spent 3 months drilling with an arsenal of weapons, eliminating any trace of human hesitation or recoil, until he had affected the effortless precision of a machine. The result was a performance that communicated a level of menace not through conscious brute force, but with an unsettling aura of implacable purpose. His sparse dialogue, delivered with mechanical precision, became instantly iconic. Lines like, "I'll be back," or "Fuck you, asshole," carried a weight far beyond their simple wording, laced with an unintentional dark humor that audiences found irresistible. This approach marked a departure from the prevailing cinematic norms featuring conventionally taciturn heroes and verbose villains. While 80s films were replete with mute psychopaths stomping their way through various horror spectacles, Schwarzenegger's Terminator stands apart. He imbued the character with a paradoxical yet vicarious charm, a mixture of a relentless determination and wry deadpan humor that subverts audience expectations, spotlighting the impact of words used sparingly. The Terminator quickly became one of film's most memorable villains, and Arnold was startled to hear the crowds cheering his anti-hero at early pre-screenings. Audiences resonated with the Terminator's display of anarchic power, minus any semblance of moral constraint. As director James Cameron noted, "There's a cathartic value to being the guy who can do whatever he wants. It's like the dark side of Superman, the bad kid that never gets punished." Schwarzenegger's Terminator strides naked into Los Angeles, bending the city to his will. He embodies the primal fantasy and outlaw spirit admired by the many. He's the ultimate outsider, unbound by social norms or ethical constraint, doing what he wants and taking what he needs with unfettered machine-like pragmatism. In stark contrast to the charismatic presence of Schwarzenegger's cybernetic Superman, Michael Biehn's Kyle Reese struggles to embody the traditional hero archetype. Despite flashbacks portraying Reese as a battle-hardened warrior, his physical and emotional fragility in the present timeline undermines this image. His scarred body and fractured psyche paint a picture not of heroic strength, but of someone weak and neurotic. Reese's character is further diminished with his lengthy, uncharismatic ramblings, his emotional vulnerability, his unhinged tirades in the police station, and his over-reliance on Sarah's assistance. Reese's romantic pursuit of Sarah across time, while ostensibly grand and noble, carries uncomfortable undertones. His single-minded focus and knowledge of Sarah's life skirt close to obsession, presenting him more as a potential stalker than savior. This discomfort is further amplified by Reese's disheveled appearance. Reese literally suffers the indignity of wearing the shit-stained pants stolen from a street bum, in contrast to his sartorial superior, dressed like a futuristic fascist, rebel without a conscience. Even Reese's final act of sacrifice, while brave, ultimately forces Sarah to complete a mission he himself fails to accomplish, subverting the typical hero saves the day narrative. By contrast, Sarah undergoes the most profound transformation, starting out as the stereotypical damsel in distress, and eventually becoming a cold, deadly Terminator herself. Sarah's arc is a significant departure from the typical portrayal of women in 80s action cinema, where female characters often served as paper-thin plot devices to further the male hero's development. It's Sarah who ultimately destroys the Terminator. Her triumphant line,
"You're terminated, fucker,"
is more than just cathartic release. It's a reclamation of agency. In a twist laden with irony, the tools of mass production and ultimate destruction become the potential instruments of humanity's salvation. Sarah's journey from passive victim to active hero mirrors this theme, suggesting that survival, both personal and collective, depends on our ability to adapt and repurpose the very things that threaten us. Although the character of Sarah may not have been a deliberate feminist statement, Cameron's reversal of conventional storytelling paved the way for more complex and empowered heroines in the decades to come. But despite the groundbreaking nature of Sarah's character and Linda Hamilton's powerful performance, she was still unceremoniously dumped from any promotional or press interviews on release of the film. Hamilton was especially scathing of Schwarzenegger's reluctance to share any of the spotlight. Shut out and sidelined in any promotional participation of the film, she blamed Arnold's dominance at press interviews, his shameless self-promotion minus any mention of his co-stars. 1984 wasn't just the year of the Terminator. It also saw the release of the first iteration of the Apple Mac computer. Computers had begun infiltrating homes, their potential for both progress and distraction so profound that Time magazine named the computer its Machine of the Year in 1982, displacing its usual human recipient. This technological revolution set the stage for a cinematic exploration of human values, colliding with the cold logic of emerging artificial intelligence. Cameron's Terminator emerged as a grim counterpoint to more optimistic sci-fi visions like Star Wars, reflecting that era's growing desperation and nihilism. The doomsday decade of the 80s was steeped in apocalyptic thought and end-of-days themes. The ever-present threat of nuclear annihilation, fueled by the arms race and space-based defense initiatives like Star Wars, permeated public consciousness. Films such as War Games and The Day After reflected the potential for all this unfettered technological development to go terribly wrong, and the spectre of nuclear annihilation loomed large and ever-present in the social psyche. The Terminator paints a world where the preponderance of machines, designed to serve humanity, never really seem to work as they should. Phones are broken and unhelpful automated systems isolate Sarah when she needs help the most. Even the phone book becomes the tool of a killer. Ginger's personal stereo is partly responsible for her death. Disconnected from a supposed moment of human intimacy, plugged into her device and oblivious to the looming threat of the Terminator in her apartment. Sarah's answering machine becomes an unwitting accomplice for being stood up first by her date, and later alerting the Terminator to her presence at the Tech Noir nightclub. The very name Tech Noir denoting the dark side of technology. Situating its apocalyptic narrative in the heart of Los Angeles taps into its cinematic noir legacy. With its overcrowding and latent menace, the familiar yet ominous landscape of shadowy alleyways and seedy nightclubs creates a palpable sense of impending doom. The choice of 1984 as the temporal setting evokes Orwellian overtones of dystopian surveillance. Law enforcement proves ineffective, and its ordinary citizens incapable of defending their way of life. It's a dirty, polluted and decadent world, both alienated and parasitic, wholly unprepared for the looming conflict and the formidable challenges that lay ahead, and it's questionable whether this entire mess is even worth saving. The narrative connections to mythological and literary tradition hold a dark mirror to the age-old anxiety about humanity's reliance and faith in technology. The film's pessimistic twist on the Prometheus myth highlights the consequences of playing God. Instead of fire bringing enlightenment and progress, the gift of AI leads to near extinction, suggesting that some knowledge or power may be too dangerous for humans to wield responsibly. The creation of machines in our own image, a being that surpasses its creators yet lacks the empathy and moral reasoning that defines consciousness, cleverly merges the cautionary tale of artificial life found in stories like Frankenstein and the Golem. Like Frankenstein's creature, the Terminator is a creation of human ingenuity, embodying the destructive potential of human ambition, ethically uncompromised, and personifying the fear of technology run amok. With its imposing physique and single-minded purpose, the Terminator represents a mechanized version of the Golem from Jewish folklore, a created servant that threatens those it was meant to protect. The film's appropriated symbolism likewise invites an undeniable quasi-religious interpretation. The apocalypse trope reflects the biblical revelation's fire and brimstone of Judgment Day. The allegorical Annunciation narrative sees Reese sent as the Archangel Gabriel to warn the Madonna about her future son, John Connor, whose initials JC suggest his messianic function as mankind's savior. The film's also a commentary on the brutality of human nature, with Cameron stating how humans can become like robots in their worst moments. Kyle's speech explaining that the Terminator can't be bargained with, can't be reasoned with, and absolutely will not stop, underscores the worst aspects of human nature, highlighting our inherently violent tendencies, our susceptibility to becoming stubborn to the point of refusing to change course, and dismissing other viewpoints even in the face of damning evidence, and how these traits often coalesce into producing deadly results. When the film came out in the fall of 1984, Arnold received the most favourable reviews of his career, with Time magazine elevating it to their list of that year's top 10 best films. The movie likewise ushered in an entire cinematic subgenre, influencing a whole generation of darkly hued action cyberpunk films. But the film's financials paled in significance to the movie's potent effect on Arnold's influence within the film industry, becoming the cornerstone upon which Schwarzenegger built his decade-long dominance at the global box office. Arnold had transitioned from being mere performer to becoming the architect of his own career. With this newfound clout, Schwarzenegger could now handpick roles, shape characters, and influence the direction of entire projects. He effectively became the producer, director, and screenwriter of his own Hollywood journey. No longer bound by the limitations of his physique or previous typecasting, his elevated status allowed Arnold to craft his public persona with greater precision. He could be depended to bring a reliable blend of workmanlike sheen and a prescribed charm to any project, enabling him to fashion his own mystique with greater discernment. In 2003, when Schwarzenegger was elected as Governor of California, he was dubbed the Governator, a nickname trading on the enduring iconic resonance and collective recognition of his most famous role, In 2008, the Terminator was selected for preservation by the National Film Registry, an honor reserved for films deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. The Terminator represented a turning point in cinema, blending philosophical depth with visceral action, and proving that even some low-budget shit movie can become a cultural touchstone that resonates for decades to come.